Hello, I am Dr. Meaghan
And I'm Dr. Mark.
from One Agora Integrative Health. What we wanted to talk to you today about is why Dr. Mark and myself use the GI maps so often in clinical care. I think people are catching on to the fact that gut health is really the core of all health. I say this all the time, but Hippocrates, the father of medicine, says it all begins in the gut. He said that a good, 150, 200 years ago.
Yeah, just that, right?
So there's a lot of other fads. It's all coming around again, which this one's a good fad.
Yep.
And so what we have learned at One Agora Integrative Health is that the GI Maps has become a huge tool for us. And I know you use it a lot, so I think it would be great to start with what do you see with the GI Maps and why do you use it so often?
So why I like the GI map over like the breath test and all that stuff is that it uses PCR, so polymerase chain reaction, and it's qualitative and quantitative, so we can see exactly what's in there and how much. So like with breath tests, those are good, they're fine, but you don't get to see how much it is. It's just positive. It's like, oh, you have hydrogen, you have methane. With this, you can see, oh, it's streptococcus making it, or it's whatever it's doing it. We can go exactly. We can tailor the care way better with it.
The other thing I really like about it is that so many people now are focused on the gut, but they don't know where to start.
Yep.
And one of the great parts of being alive right now, but it can also be a hardship, is that there's so much information out there. There's parasite cleanses, there's yeast cleanses, there's bacterial cleanses, there's just bowel cleanses where you're just there to move your bowels a lot. And then what happens is you can throw a lot of things at somebody and they might not need all of that. So the other great thing is that, when we look at the price of the GI maps, I just think that it is such a great investment because you're not going to be doing a bunch of cleanses that you specifically don't need. You're not going to be throwing all these products and maybe even wasting 3 months of time and money of things that your gut doesn't need, and you're able to really then focus on exactly the health of your gut and what you need.
Yeah. And the other thing with that too is I've seen a lot of patients that they give up after a month, and it's like, oh, with this, we know that you should have kept going.
Yeah.
It's like you were in the right spot and you stopped too soon. You would have got results if you would have gotten another couple months or something.
Yeah.
So we can change the approach if you don't feel something after 6-8 weeks or something, and then we can be like, oh, let's switch it up a bit.
Yeah.
But we know we're in the right spot.
Well, and I think the power of functional medicine and integrative medicine is that we take subjective, like what you tell us, your symptoms, those kind of things. But when we can have something that's objective and have, your information there in front of us, we can put those two things together. And, I think that that's important because so many times, too, people don't spend the money on the objective information.
Yep.
And the reason why both of us are just such a supporter of this test is because when we can take this, then help you through your journey, whether it's 3 months, whether there's a lot of things and it's more like a 6-month, 9-month, year process, then we also know that you're on the right track.
Yep.
So let's go through a little bit on what is on the GI map, like what indicators and sort of categories of indicators do we get?
Yep. So you get they're called keystone bacteria, so they're your good commensal bacteria, and they do different things like fight inflammation or help your mucosal layer and those kind of things. So we can see where you're at. It doesn't test all of them, obviously, but we can see if you have good flora in there. Then I'll check for bad stuff. So
I wanted to really quickly go back to the good, because one pattern that we've seen in the last couple of years that's been a game changer for us is that, especially, we think it has something to do with the COVID spike protein. We're now finding people that are completely wiped out in Akkermansia.
Yep.
And now, if I said Akkermansia 3-4 years ago, nobody would have heard that term. Even functional medicine providers, we weren't seeing these low levels of Akkermansia. We're seeing them now, and that's been the big thing for a lot of people that we would never know. And that's why now you're seeing these probiotics that have Akkermansia in it. That's so important for mucosal health, immune health, and metabolic health. Yep. People will gain weight when that Akkermansia isn't right. So that's been one of the big things and things that we've seen and markers that we've seen that have been a big difference for people.
And they did studies where that Akkermansia being low, if you can get it back up, it'll trigger your own GLP-1 and you'll lose weight with it.
Yeah.
And it's almost as good as the Ozempics and all this other kind of stuff. It is awesome.
Yeah, definitely awesome. And then you were saying, too, then they have bad bacteria on here.
Yep, so that's where a lot of that SIBO, the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, tons of people have that, so we can see where you are with that.
And I've been finding a lot of people that are strep carriers, and the reservoirs in their gut. And so these are the people like Strep and Klebsiella, which are two bacteria where the strep, that it might be an individual that every time they get sick, they don't have active strep symptoms necessarily day to day, but then when they get sick, they'll have strep, like they'll have always a sore throat. Klebsiella tends to go to the lungs, so there are people that always have respiratory infections when they get sick. We don't want these bacteria to be in higher levels than they should, because it is hard on the immune system, the nervous system, and the hormones, especially like we're finding now too, this whole world of strep. If you're a strep carrier and you have high levels, it's not just, oh, there's strep. It's the fact that we're seeing more autoimmunity, we're seeing more immune, neurological, and even with kids, we're seeing something called pandas, where you don't develop correctly because you have higher levels of strep.
Yep. So then the next thing, it does fungus and yeast. So tons of people have yeast overgrowth, so we can see candida and all that stuff in there. Wipe that out. Then it'll look at like pathogens, like all your like Giardias and E. coli's and all that kind of stuff in there, like bad pathogens.
Yep, and then the parasites too.
And then parasites, protozoa, worms, all that stuff. But then one of my favorite things about this is it'll do your intestinal health markers. So it'll look at like steatocrit and pancreatic enzymes, like the elastase. It'll look at your first line of immune function, so like your immunoglobulin A and all that stuff. And then if you're developing antibodies to gluten, which is a super important one for a lot of people, where it's like, oh, I cut gluten out for a month, that didn't do anything. It's like, well, your antibodies are still crazy high.
Yeah.
We need to go longer so we can get there. And then calprotectin and zonulin, like the gold standard for leaky gut and everything.
Yeah.
So.
And that's where too, then you can cater everything. Like you can say, okay, what do we have to restore? Like which bacteria do we have to put back in, the good probiotics? What do we have to remove? What do we have to then replace? And what do we have to really do to restore that gut integrity, that gut function, things like that. And so it really is a way to just customize and to make sure that we're doing everything right. And I think everybody should do a GI Maps.
Yeah. It is awesome.
Yep. Whether you're obviously dealing with like IBS is a big one, if you're dealing with gut issues, but now when people come into like my cancer patients, my longevity patients, they're like, which test should I do? GI is always one of the functional medicine tests that everybody should do, because everything begins in the gut. It's great too to have a baseline. So let's say like in 5-6 years, you get really sick and we want to see where maybe some of those changes have been. We'll have a baseline of where you're at. And then it gives us an idea of what gut programs should you do.
Yeah. And of the hundreds of them that I've seen, I've never seen a perfect one.
Yeah.
So there's always something that you could do to help your gut.
Yeah. So unfortunately with our foods and everything else, like it's a test we all need. So you can definitely reach out to us at One Agora Integrative Health. We do offer this test that we can, order it for you. Dr. Mark, I think you're sort of our gut specialist a lot of times. Not only because of your knowledge, but because of your passion. and so, we want to help you through functional medicine journeys, but for us to help you do it the right way for you.
Yep.
So, all right. Yeah. Reach out with any questions, and thanks everybody for joining us today.